So, most of you guys think about college. I know most of you probably feel a little bit stressed. You might feel overwhelmed, especially right now that we're like pretty much halfway through the semester, things are starting to pick up. So I'm sure most of us probably feel like this. And this may seem like, looking at all the things on the picture, it may seem kind of like, you know, your typical like feelings about college and how you have to balance it with all your other things. But for not most, but a lot of students, this is just kind of like an everyday thing you have to deal with. And today I will be talking to you about students who have to deal with mental illnesses in college and how some of the mental illnesses are developed because of college. And I'll be talking also about how they affect them for the rest of their lives. And I'll start with telling a personal story. I don't know if you guys can know this, but I have a lot of anxiety, and doing this is like killing me right now. But I'm getting through it. And I noticed when I was in high school, it kind of started off a little bit. I would realize I'd be a lot more nervous than usual when it would come to public speaking. And it would affect my test-taking skills, and it would also affect how I would interact with other people. So I would kind of isolate myself a little bit, so I'm a huge introvert. But then once I got into college, I realized that it just got out of control, and I couldn't control it. And I wouldn't really understand what was going on. So then my mom took me to see a doctor because she has anxiety. Then I found out that I have severe social anxiety, and my doctor pretty much just told me different ways to cope with it. And now I kind of have it under control. I mean, I'm able to do this without like crying. But there are times where it gets hard, and for a lot of other students, they might not realize what they have, so they don't know what to do. And so I will be talking about that today. Some of the most common illnesses that are happening amongst college students is, of course, anxiety. According to the Association for University and College Counseling Center, 41.6% of all college students have anxiety, and that is the most common, and then followed by 36.4% students who are suffering from depression. And they typically like to label them as different things, since depression is obviously like a much more severe case. But then there are also a lot of students who are suffering with relationship problems that can lead to anxiety and depression and a lot of other things. And it's all happening while they're in college. And then these disorders are usually developed between the ages of 18 to 24. And usually brand new freshmen are the ones who are the most vulnerable to it because it's such a big change for them and they don't really know how to handle it. And then this isn't necessarily an illness, but stress levels are also high, and then stress could lead to these things, so it's all just a big circle. And of course, as you can imagine, things like this are affecting students and their academic careers. And then for most of these illnesses, for students who don't receive any type of treatment, it does tend to get very out of control. So about 70% of all college students have considered suicide as a means to just kind of get out of it and just give up on everything. And that suicide is the third leading cause of death on college campuses. And that all this information is obviously very alarming, but the only way to figure it out is to kind of figure out first what is causing all of this. And so I forgot the source where I got this, but we were typically labeled as living in the age of anxiety, so pretty much our generation is known as that. And that one of the main reasons for that is all the pressure that has increased amongst different types of academics. So obviously, as we all know, I can't think of the word for it. Like the competition to transfer and to go into other colleges and especially universities is really high, and the acceptance rates are starting to get a lot higher due to many different factors such as like income and also grades and everything. And there's a lot of first generation students who are starting to go into college now, so that just adds more to the stress, and that's leading to students developing different mental disorders because of it, because they might not feel like they're good enough, and they might feel like they might think about it too much and kind of go at it at their own pace and not get any assistance to it. So it does lead to things like that. And that many students are also starting to take multiple classes at once, or more than they can handle, just so that way they can shorten the time that they will be trying to get into colleges and trying to transfer. So that way it'll also help them save money, since they do develop, or they do increase their debt. So having a lot on your workload does also help to increase the chances of developing disorders. And then also family size plays a large role, since there are a lot of first-generation students. Richard Weisbord, who is a faculty member of Harvard School of Education and a child and family psychologist, believes that achievement has, in many cases, become the chief goal of child raising. So a lot of parents are kind of making it like a standard that if you don't really go to college, you're not really going to do well in life. And having their children have that type of mentality and that type of state of mind when they're in college could lead them to working too hard and could also lead them to developing different disorders just naturally because of how they feel. And then, of course, economic status contributes to everything. And both male and female college students reported that feeling academic stress because of the economic downturn, and that it particularly relates to economic conditions, economic outlook, and financial burden, with the highest rates of stress being experienced by fourth-year students. And students are either trying to prepare themselves to meet the needs of the job market or are planning to enroll in further education to increase their human capital. So all of these things that are just in their mind going on while they're in college can typically lead to them just focusing on it and not thinking too much about themselves and their own mental health and not kind of like taking it slow. And there are a lot of people, a lot of older people who feel like the stress from college isn't really a valid reason to have a mental disorder, because it's just like college is something that most students just have to go through, they have to deal with it. So why would one student who's feeling this way and then there's another student who isn't, like why should we consider that their feelings are real? Which they are, which is why I added this photo to the presentation, because I thought it was a really good representation for what I'm talking about. And how, students who do deal with these things, like we don't do it for attention, it's just how we are, and that we kind of just want people to understand that it's not easy for everyone. And then, for my conclusion, I just kind of wanted to talk about how being a student obviously isn't easy for a lot of people. There are a lot of factors going on that make it hard for a lot of different ways. And having anxiety while you're in college and having any type of mental illness, whether it be like eating disorders or depression or anything of the sorts, it does make it difficult for a lot of people. So it is good if you have like a friend who you see is really stressed out to kind of just let them know that you're there for them, and just to kind of remind them that everyone gets through it, and that even though you do kind of have something else that's going on, like the anxiety and everything, there is ways and there is help out there to get it. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Natalie, what did you think?
I think the presentation as a whole was really good. You could tell that she was comfortable with the topic, and obviously it was a good topic because it was relatable to the audience. And she used personal experiences, which made it interesting. She was fidgeting with her cards at times, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. I wish that she was a little bit more organized with the points that she presented at the beginning of her presentation, and the visual aids that she used worked. So I think it was good.
All right. Well, I thought there were lots of things that went really well, and then a few things that didn't go quite as well as you might have hoped. I thought that the visual that you had for the attention device was cute. It worked well. It's easy for students to relate to. I'd agree with Natalie that this is a good topic for an audience like this, and your personal experience is one of the things that makes it interesting to listen to, and I think will probably give people some perspective on what it is you're talking about. I think you could use a little bit more of that, not necessarily your personal experience, but a little bit more in the way of examples and illustrations in some other places, because there's a lot of generic information in the presentation. some of which is nice. It's good. It's well cited. I thought you did a good job providing sources of information. But we could use some practical examples for us to be able to relate to a little bit. Stories of some of the stresses that students go through, for instance, that maybe are financial in nature or maybe have to do with taking tests, or for example, you had the one quote that suggests that we've become a culture that's all about accomplishment, and if you aren't going to college, you're not really accomplishing any sort of thing like that. Well, there's a lot of social criticism about that. I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who've talked about not being able to live up to their parents' expectations, or illustrations of embarrassment when people drop out of school or something like that, that would give people the kinds of anxiety or even depression that you're talking about when it comes to these sorts of mental illnesses. And I think a story or two illustrating those would make it a little bit more interesting. Although, like I said, it is a topic that I think the audience is going to be able to relate to, because it affects people in this particular age group going through this particular experience. I'm going to agree with Natalie about the major issue being organization. It seemed to me at the beginning that it sounded like you had a two-part speech with a second introductory section for it, and I wasn't quite clear what the two parts were going to be, and then in the body of the speech, it was just information. It was good information. It wasn't unclear as it was developing, but I'm not exactly sure how it's building to make the point that you're talking about. So I think you need to work that a little bit more, and as a consequence, the transitions are needed to help structure it a little bit more as well. So the research content is good, the explanations are pretty solid, audience interest is high because of your personal experience and because of the subject matter that you chose, so that's benefiting you. I thought you had a good organization, so you're doing a good job there. The visuals, I like the image that you had on the first slide. Like I said, I think that does a good job, but you got a whole bunch of statistical information that probably could have easily been turned into a visual graphic that would make it a little bit more memorable and easy for people to hold on to some of the concepts that you've talked about. Maybe some definitional issues about the different kinds of anxiety, or contrasting anxiety to depression for a definitional, like a table chart thing that would indicate the kinds of things that we're talking about here. Because it's not really very well developed. The second slide that you show it to us 4 minutes before you ever refer to it. It becomes kind of wallpaper in the background. I sort of understood the point that you were making, because I have some context on this particular thing, but when you finally get to the point, I think there's a little bit of an explanation here that says a lot of people don't seem to take this very seriously. People from different generations may not perceive this as being problematic. They may dismiss people's sincere difficulties or problems in some way, and we don't really want that to be the case. We need to address these kinds of issues. They are important, and we ought to be concerned with them, and so that's why that slogan is there, and why that slide really exists. But none of it adds a lot of information to the presentation. Like I said, it's just background. I thought your delivery was really solid for somebody who's claiming to suffer from some anxiety issues. You do a good job, so whoever your therapist is or a physician, they've given you some good advice for managing those kinds of things. I did think that you stepped on your exit a little bit. I thought that you were working up the conclusion. You had a couple of points where you're sort of summarizing, and then you just kind of, sort of bailed at the end of the speech. You want to get back to, you could refer back to the opening section, or again, your personal experience, and have a good finishing point instead of that kind of, basically that's it. That feels like it's a kind of a cop-out. All right, thank you.